The story I'm about to tell you today starts with a family portrait. It was my father-in-law's birthday, the day of the annual family photo. My mother-in-law snapped at me. "You're not even really family." That was it. My husband, pretending not to hear, just kept scrolling through his phone. I left the house in silence and bought a train ticket to my parents' place. All right, everyone squeeze into the center. Grandparents sitting in the middle, the son and daughter-in-law standing behind, and the kids crouching in the front. The photographer's booming voice echoed through the sprawling living room where the entire Sterling family had gathered. Standing at the far edge, I twisted the hem of my dress without realizing it. The annual family portrait was a monumental event for the Sterlings. My mother-in-law, Margaret Sterling, had her hair professionally blown out just for the occasion, and my father-in-law, Richard Sterling, had pulled out the dark navy suit he reserved exclusively for major holidays. "Harper, move a little to the left. You're blocking our Chloe." My mother-in-law frowned and shooed me away with her hand, like she was swatting a fly. Without a word, I took a half step to the left. I could already sense what was coming. Every year in the family photo, my place was always on the very edge, as if I were merely part of the wallpaper. "Perfect. That looks great," the photographer said, adjusting his tripod. "Now, everyone smile. I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2... Wait a minute." My mother-in-law suddenly raised her hand, halting the session. All eyes locked onto her. After clearing her throat, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "Harper, you're not family, so you shouldn't be in the picture. Step aside and stand over there." The living room plunged into a chilling silence. I felt the blood rush to my head, a sharp ringing piercing my ears. "Margaret?" My voice came out in a tremble so thin I barely recognized it. But my mother-in-law, acting as if she couldn't hear me, turned back to the photographer. "Sir, just take the picture of the Sterling family. We don't need her." I turned to look at my husband, Julian. He kept his head down, swiping his thumb across his iPhone screen as if he hadn't heard a single word. My sister-in-law, Chloe, wore a faint smirk on her lips, and my father-in-law, after glancing at me out of the corner of his eye as if he might say something, simply let out a heavy sigh. "All right." The words that left my mouth sounded terrifyingly calm. I took off the red cardigan I had worn specifically for the photo, laid it over a chair, and walked straight to the foyer. I grabbed my purse and my phone. Behind me, I heard my mother-in-law's disgruntled muttering, "What has gotten into her now?" The sound of the front door clicking shut cut off her words. Stepping out of the Sterling's driveway in the wealthy New Jersey suburb, the crisp, late autumn wind brushed against my face. It was only then I realized my cheeks were soaked with tears. I mechanically opened the Uber app, typed in the nearest Amtrak station, and requested a ride. When I got in, the driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror and quietly turned up the heat. "Are you all right, miss?" I nodded, biting my lip hard to keep from sobbing. My phone started vibrating. Julian's name flashed on the screen, but I powered the device off and tossed it into my bag. The train station was bustling with people. I bought a ticket for the next Northeast Regional heading upstate to where my parents lived. In the waiting area, I turned my phone back on. I had over 20 text messages, mostly from Julian. "Where are you? We're done with the photos. Come back. Stop acting crazy. Seriously." The most recent message was an audio text from my mother-in-law. I pressed play. Her shrill voice pierced through the speaker with such force that people around me turned to look. "Harper, what on earth are you doing? If you leave, who's going to cook the pot roast for the 6 of us? Don't you know it's your father-in-law's birthday?" I stared blankly at the audio message and suddenly burst out laughing. A laugh that quickly spiraled into a fresh torrent of tears. In the end, that was my only value to them. A free personal chef, an assistant, a maid, but never family. With fingers trembling from rage, I typed back. "From today on, whoever is hungry can cook. I'm done playing the maid. Send. Block." Power off. It all happened in an instant. Over the PA system, they announced the boarding of my train. I grabbed my bag and headed to the platform without looking back. My 3 years of enduring that household ended today. Margaret's phrase, "You're not family," was the final straw that shattered all my hopes for this marriage, and Julian's silence was a wound deeper than any word. The Amtrak train sped along the tracks, the landscape outside the window blurring past. I wiped my tears, and looking at my puffy eyes reflected in the glass, I made myself a promise. This time, I wouldn't go back so easily. "Harper, honey, what are you doing here at this hour?" When I opened the front door, my mother, Susan, was mopping the hallway. The Swiffer in her hands hit the floor with a thud, splashing water onto her slippers. I tried to speak, but a lump in my throat choked off my voice. "Mom!" Barely pronouncing the word, the tears welled up again. My mother rushed over and hugged me tightly. The familiar scent of her fabric softener wrapped around me, and I cried my eyes out for a long time, like a lost little girl. "What happened, sweetie? Did Julian do something to you?" my mother asked, her voice shaking as she rubbed my back. My father, David, also rushed out of his home office, his reading glasses knocked askew. "Harper, what the hell is going on?" I could only shake my head, unable to articulate a single word through the weeping. My mother sat me down on the couch and placed a mug of hot tea in my hands. I held it with both hands, and watching the liquid tremble with my shaking pulse, I managed to calm down a bit. His mother told me I couldn't be in the family photo because I'm not family, I said, after taking a deep breath. And Julian acted like he didn't hear a thing. My father's face instantly flushed red with anger, and he slammed his fist on the coffee table. "Those bastards. Have you eaten anything?" my mother asked, stroking my hair. Her eyes were red too. "Come on. Let me heat up some chicken noodle soup for you." It was then I realized I had skipped lunch. My stomach was empty and burning, but I had zero appetite. Just as I was about to shake my head, the doorbell rang. The three of us looked toward the door simultaneously. My father leaped up and threw the door wide open. "David!" Julian's voice came from the porch. "Harper's here, right?" I came to pick her up. My father, blocking the doorway, didn't budge. "Pick her up? Where do you plan on taking her? Back to a house where my daughter is treated like a total stranger?" Julian tried to force his way in. "Please, David, don't be like this. It's just a tiny misunderstanding." "Step aside." My father's voice was low, but every syllable cut like a knife. "My daughter comes home crying her eyes out and you call it a tiny misunderstanding." Julian managed to squeeze into the living room. Seeing my swollen eyes, his expression hardened for a second. He was wearing the charcoal gray peacoat I had bought him for Christmas last year, his hair slicked back without a single strand out of place. He smelled like the expensive cologne his mother always bought him. He walked over and tried to grab my hand. "Come on, let's go home." I pulled my hand away. "Stop it. You know exactly how your mother is." Julian sighed, looking at me like he was trying to pacify a bratty child. "It's not a big deal. It's just a stupid family photo." I stared at him for a few seconds and burst into a dry laugh. "Julian, in the 3 years we've been married, have I ever looked decent in a family photo?" He fell silent. Year 1. I started counting on my fingers. "You guys shoved me into the darkest corner because my dress clashed with the color scheme, and you couldn't even see my face. Year 2. You told me my hair was messy, and sent me to the kitchen to fetch appetizers while the camera clicked. And this year, you flat out call me a stranger." Julian frowned. "Do you seriously remember all that nonsense?" "Nonsense?" I jumped up, slamming the mug onto the table with a sharp clack. "For your mother's birthday. I spend 3 days straight cooking a massive holiday dinner, but for my dad's birthday, there isn't even a slice of cake. Do you remember when your sister said she was craving sushi, and after getting off work late, I had to run to the grocery store at 9 p.m. to get it for her? Harper." Julian's face changed color. "Calm down." "I am perfectly calm." My voice was surprisingly steady. "Julian, You have two options. Either we move out and live on our own, or we get a divorce. The living room went dead silent. My mother held her breath, and my father straightened his posture. Julian looked at me as if I were a stranger. Are you crazy? You want a divorce over a picture? It's not about the picture. I shook my head. It's about the last 3 years. About every single day your family has treated me like the hired help, like an outsider, like I'm beneath them. Our family? Julian scoffed. Harper, did you forget who paid the down payment on that condo? Who got your little brother a summer internship? And now you're acting all high and mighty because you think you're something special? My father stepped between us. Watch your mouth, Julian. David, don't interfere in our marriage. Julian turned back to me, adopting a softer tone. Harper, let's go home. I'll pretend this never happened. I'm not going back, I said, looking him right in the eyes. Not unless you promise we'll move out. Julian's face turned ashen. That's impossible. My mom's health isn't great. Someone has to take care of her. Then we're getting a divorce, I said calmly. Suddenly, Julian exploded. He swept his arm across the table, knocking over the fruit bowl. Apples and oranges rolled across the hardwood floor, and the glass bowl shattered. Harper, enough, he yelled, pointing a finger in my face. What do you think is going to happen to you if we divorce? Who's going to want to take on a divorced woman? My father grabbed him by the collar of his shirt. Get the hell out of my house, right now. Julian shoved his hand away and adjusted his coat. Perfect. Great, Harper. Don't come crying to me later. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard that a framed picture on the wall rattled and fell. I collapsed onto the sofa, trembling from head to toe. My mother wrapped her arm around my shoulders and whispered, It's okay, sweetie. Mom and Dad are here. My father picked up the fallen frame from the floor, and after a long silence, he said abruptly, Divorce him. You can't stay in that house. I looked at him. In his eyes, there was a fierce determination I had never seen before. Late into the night, lying in my childhood bed, I stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling, the ones I had put up in high school. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my coworker, Jenna. Harper, can you make it to the office tomorrow? Marcus, the VP of our division, brought up the Southeast Asia expansion project again. I think this could be your chance. Reading it, I recalled the corporate dinner from 3 months ago. Marcus Thorne had mentioned expanding into the APAC market, and I spent an entire week pulling all-nighters to draft a comprehensive project proposal. But in the end, my team lead, Valerie, stole all the credit. What project? I texted back. The Renewable Energy Partnership. Valerie completely botched it, and the VP is furious. They're looking for a new project manager. Jenna's messages came pouring in. By the way, is everything okay at home? Julian called the front desk earlier looking for you, and he did not sound friendly. I scoffed. Nothing major. See you tomorrow. I put the phone down and walked over to the window. The moonlight filtered through the branches of an old oak tree, casting speckled shadows on the lawn. 3 years ago, on a moonlit night just like this, Julian had waited outside my apartment all night with a thermos of honey lemon tea because I had a cold. Back then, he was so attentive. The first time I visited his parents' house, I was so nervous I spilled a glass of water. He took the blame and defended me. When his mother glared at me, he squeezed my hand under the table. When did he start changing? Maybe it was the day of our wedding. When I was forced to wear a dress his mother picked out, one that didn't flatter me at all. Or maybe it was when we returned from our honeymoon to find out that his mother, under the guise of helping out, had redecorated our master bedroom however she pleased, even reorganizing my underwear drawer. I shook my head and turned on my laptop. I opened the draft of the project proposal Valerie had snatched from me. Suddenly, I realized something. This could be my opportunity, the chance to take back control of my life. The next morning, I put on a sharp, tailored suit for the first time in ages. At the Sterling house, my mother-in-law had practically banned them, saying they made me look like a man and forcing me to wear frilly floral dresses instead. My reflection in the mirror looked infinitely more alive, save for the faint dark circles under my eyes. "I'll drive you," my dad said in the foyer, jingling his car keys. "We'll get you a new phone number on the way." During the drive, my father was quiet. Only when my office building in downtown Manhattan came into view did he break the silence. "Harper, your dad just wants you to be happy." I felt a lump in my throat and nodded. As soon as I walked into the corporate lobby, Jenna ran up to me. "Oh my God. Julian wouldn't stop calling yesterday." The switchboard was blowing up. "What happened?" "Nothing crazy. I'm filing for divorce," I said casually, though I noticed several coworkers turning their heads in shock. Jenna's eyes widened to the size of saucers. Before she could respond, Valerie marched over, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. "Harper, the VP wants to see you," she said, looking me up and down. "You better prepare yourself. The APAC project is on the verge of cancellation, and the losses are astronomical." "Oh, really?" I replied calmly. "Because I heard someone doctored the metrics, and the partner is questioning our credibility." Valerie's face tightened. "What nonsense are you talking about? Didn't I tell you Marcus is waiting?" I stepped past her and headed straight for the VP's corner office. As I knocked on the glass door, my palms were sweaty, but remembering Julian's furious face from yesterday, a wave of courage washed over me. The worst-case scenario? Divorced and unemployed. It couldn't get any worse than it already was. "Come in." Marcus Thorne's voice echoed from inside. When I opened the door, he was reviewing some files. He glanced up once and pointed to the chair across from his mahogany desk. "Have a seat. Is everything all right at home?" "Yes. All sorted," I said, straightening my back. "How much do you know about the Southeast Asia project?" he asked directly. I took a deep breath. "Everything. I wrote the initial proposal. Later, the team lead, Valerie, made some modifications." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I see. Then tell me, why did our partner question our projections?" "Because Valerie altered the Q3 energy efficiency ratio," I said, meeting his gaze. "The original data was at 0.78, but she changed it to 0.85, a figure that defies all logic in this sector." Marcus snapped the folder shut. "How do you know that?" "I spent 4 months doing market research. I have the source documentation for all the data." I pulled a flash drive from my purse. "The raw, original material is all right here." Marcus took the USB and plugged it into his MacBook. A few minutes later, he looked up at me. "Harper, if I put you in charge of this project, are you capable of salvaging it?" My heart was beating like a drum. 70%. "The remaining 30% depends on the backing the firm gives me," I said honestly. Marcus laughed. "I like that. Starting today, this project is yours. You report directly to me. Bypass Valerie entirely." When I walked out of the office, my legs were trembling. Jenna gave me a discreet thumbs up while Valerie glared at me, her face ashen. My new phone vibrated. I had ported my contacts. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Harper!" Julian yelled from the other end. "How dare you ignore my calls? My mom says her cousins are coming over for dinner tonight, so you need to be home to cook the roast." I looked at my computer screen, which displayed the project files I had just inherited, and I started laughing. "Mr. Sterling, didn't your mother tell you? Strangers aren't obligated to cook for your family." With that, I hung up and blocked the number. For the next 3 days, I locked myself in a hotel room near the office. By day, Zoom calls and negotiations. By night, revising the project framework. The Singaporean partner's stance was rigid. Every minute counted. My phone lit up again. An email from Julian. "Harper, if you keep this up, this marriage is over." I glanced at it out of the corner of my eye and placed the phone face down on the desk. On my monitor, the numbers in the data report kept shifting. I rubbed my temples. After 3 sleepless nights, my eyes felt like they were full of sand. Jenna knocked on the open door and walked in, holding 2 iced coffees. Marcus just asked about the progress. I told him the revised version will be on his desk by EOD. I took the coffee. The bitter liquid washed down my throat, jolting me awake. Jenna hesitated for a second before saying, "Look." Julian called the front desk again. Reception fielded it. "What did he want?" I asked, without looking up. "He said if you don't come home, he's going to sue you for abandonment of the marital home." Jenna's voice trailed off. My typing fingers froze. Then I burst out laughing. Abandonment? For 3 years, my entire paycheck went toward the household expenses, and every single day after work, I killed myself cooking and cleaning. He doesn't even know which drawer his own socks are in, and now he's claiming abandonment? Jenna sighed. "Harper, what are you going to do?" My gaze returned to the monitor. The cursor blinked over a spreadsheet cell. "First, I finish this project, and then..." I paused. "I divorce him." Saying those 2 words out loud felt as if an invisible hand squeezed my heart, but immediately after, a strange sense of liberation washed over me, as if I had finally dropped a massive boulder I'd been carrying for miles. Jenna's eyes widened. "You've really decided. Do you know why my mother-in-law called me a stranger?" I said, looking at my reflection in the dark coffee. "Because the condo is solely in Julian's name. Even though my parents put up half the money for the down payment. His mother controlled all the wedding money, and even had access to my direct deposit account." I couldn't continue and shook my head. "Whatever. There's no point talking about it. Come on, help me cross-check these metrics." Jenna took the documents, and though she looked like she wanted to say more, stayed quiet. We worked in silence until well past midnight. On the morning of the 4th day, just as I was walking into the corporate lobby, I heard a loud commotion. A crowd had formed near the security turnstiles, and a familiar voice made my blood run cold. "I'm telling you, she's a shameless gold digger. She abandons her sick husband and spends her days sleeping around." My mother-in-law Margaret's voice sliced through the murmurs. "Today, I'm going to confront that wretched woman face to face." The click of my heels echoed on the marble floor. Everyone turned to look at me. Margaret was wearing an intense burgundy pantsuit today, her hair sprayed stiff, her lips painted a loud crimson. Beside her was my sister-in-law, Chloe. Seeing me, Chloe tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Harper!" My mother-in-law lunged toward me, raising her hand to slap me. I stepped back, and a burly security guard quickly intercepted her. The entire lobby was watching. Some had already pulled out their phones to record. "Mrs. Sterling, this is a place of business. Please calm down," I said, trying to maintain my composure, though I felt a slight tremor in my fingers. "Calm down? How do you expect me to calm down?" Margaret wrestled against the guard, pointing her finger right at my face. "My Julian has had a fever for 3 days, and you haven't called once. You don't cook, you don't clean, and now you've abandoned your home." Chloe chimed in from the sidelines. "Harper, how could you be like this? Mom had to drive all the way into the city." I took a deep breath. I could feel everyone's stares like needles pricking my back. Just then, a ding sounded, and the elevator doors slid open. Out walked Marcus Thorne, the VP. "What is going on here?" he demanded, frowning at the chaos. Margaret immediately pivoted toward him. "Are you the manager here?" "I'm here to report one of your employees." "Harper is a..." "Mr. Thorne," I interrupted, my voice clear and firm. "This is my mother-in-law. There's been a domestic misunderstanding, and I will handle it immediately." Marcus's gaze shifted from me to my mother-in-law. Then, smoothly, he said, "Harper, don't forget the 9 a.m. briefing." Turning to Margaret with a curt nod, he added, "Excuse me, ma'am, but we are expecting a highly important client." Margaret looked dumbfounded. "Briefing? I thought she was just some low-level desk jockey." Marcus was already walking toward the conference rooms when he casually dropped the bomb. Harper is the lead project manager for the Southeast Asia expansion. She is an incredibly valuable asset to this firm. Those words landed like a grenade. Margaret and Chloe stood there with their mouths hanging open in shock. I used the window of opportunity to usher them out of the lobby and into a nearby Starbucks. As soon as we sat down, my mother-in-law slammed her hand on the table. "Harper, so you've moved up in the world, huh? They make you a manager and you don't even tell your family? How much of a raise did you get?" "Margaret," I said, looking her dead in the eyes. "You came to my workplace to cause a scene because you wanted to get me fired." She was momentarily speechless, but quickly raised her voice again. "Who told you not to come home? Our Julian is sick." "He's not going to die from a mild fever, is he?" I said coldly. "I played the maid for your son for 3 years. Is it such a crime that I want to focus on my career for a few days?" Chloe interjected. "Harper, how can you say that? When a woman gets married, family comes first." "Oh, really?" I turned to her. "Then you, with a college degree, why aren't you looking for a job instead of spending all day at home binge-watching Netflix and shopping on Amazon?" Chloe's face flushed bright red. "Enough. We're done here," Margaret snapped. "Harper, you are coming home with me today. End of story." Julian said it himself. "If you don't come back in 3 days, he's filing for divorce." Just then, a barista brought over our coffees. Hearing the D word, his hand shook, making the ceramic cups clink. I waited until he walked away before slowly opening my mouth. Then let him do whatever he wants. Margaret and Chloe stared at me as if they had seen a ghost. Suddenly, Margaret lowered her voice. "Are you out of your mind? What's going to happen to you if you divorce? Who is going to want some used goods? Someone better than the family who treats me like a free servant," I said, standing up. "I have a meeting, so I'm leaving. And please, do not ever come looking for me at the office again. If you do, I'll have no choice but to call the police." Stepping out of Starbucks, the morning sunlight blinded me. I pulled out my phone and looked at the last email Julian had sent me. My thumb, which had hovered over the screen for a few seconds, finally moved. "Draft the divorce papers and have your lawyer send them. Hit send." I let out a long sigh. I felt as if invisible chains had just snapped off my wrists. When I returned to the office, everyone was looking at me weirdly. Jenna rushed over. "Oh my God. Your mother-in-law is terrifying. The VP asked me earlier what was going on, and I didn't know what to say to him." "Where is Marcus now?" "In the boardroom with the clients from Malaysia." "Where are you going?" Without answering, I marched straight to the boardroom. I knocked softly. "Come in." Opening the door, I saw Marcus and several suited clients deep in discussion. I took a deep breath. "Mr. Thorne, I apologize for interrupting. I wanted to offer an explanation for the incident downstairs this morning." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "We're in the middle of a meeting. Just 1 minute," I insisted, standing my ground. "I am currently going through a divorce. I deeply regret that a personal matter compromised the professional atmosphere of this firm. However, I promise you, this will not affect the progress or the results of the project in any way." The room fell into a dead silence. A Malaysian executive suddenly asked in English, "Is she the project lead?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, Harper is a highly competent professional." "Interesting." The client looked me up and down. I highly value executives who can seamlessly balance their professional duties with personal crises, Mr. Thorne. I'd like to hear Harper's input on the tech transfer clause we were just debating." I was stunned. Marcus gestured for me to take a seat. "Harper, what's your proposal on the tech transfer?" For the next 2 hours, I completely forgot about the morning's drama and immersed myself in the negotiations. When the meeting concluded, the Malaysian client was the first to offer his hand. "Harper, I look forward to doing business with you." After seeing the clients out, Marcus stopped me. "Harper, are you all right?" "Yes, I'm fine." Thank you, Marcus, I said, forcing a smile. I went through a messy divorce too, he said suddenly. My ex-wife moved to Vancouver with our son. I looked at him in surprise, not knowing how to react. Sometimes, enduring the fallout of a decision is harder than making the decision itself. He handed me a sleek business card. This lawyer is top tier. Call him if you need to. Thank you. I suddenly felt my eyes tearing up. Back at my desk, my phone screen lit up again. An email from Julian. Are you serious? You're really throwing away our marriage over a stupid photo? I stared at the screen and remembered the last 3 years. The times his mother audited my grocery receipts item by item. The time Julian let his sister borrow my expensive makeup, and she returned it ruined. The night I came home late from a long shift to find the entire family had gone out to a steakhouse for dinner, leaving me not a single plate of leftovers. What hurt the most was last month when I was admitted to the ER for acute gastroenteritis, and the first thing his mother said was, "Well, how are we going to pay the mortgage this month?" Julian stopped by the hospital for 10 minutes and left, claiming he had to work. In the end, it was Jenna who brought me clean clothes. I slowly typed my reply. It's not about the photo. It's about every single day of the last 3 years. Hit send. I opened my laptop and started reviewing the project roadmap. Work doesn't betray you. The effort you put in translates to results. But marriage? I shook my head and focused on the screen. After work, Jenna sneaked up to my cubicle. Guess what? Valerie is fuming. Marcus praised you in front of the whole executive team today. Said the client specifically highlighted your professionalism. While packing up my desk, I felt a twinge of bitterness. Oh, by the way, Jenna whispered. Julian called the front desk again. Said he's giving you 3 days to think it over, or else he's filing first. I zipped my tote bag. I don't need 3 days. I can give him the answer right now. Walking out of the skyscraper, the evening breeze eased the day's exhaustion. I pulled out my phone and dialed Julian's number. Harper? Have you changed your mind? His voice sounded hopeful. Julian, I said calmly. Let's get a divorce. There was a silence of several seconds on the line. Then I heard the sound of him grinding his teeth. Harper, don't you dare regret this. I hung up and looked up at the night sky over the city. 3 years ago, at our wedding, when the pastor told us to look at each other and vow eternal love, I never imagined a day like this would come. But strangely, I didn't feel like crying. On the contrary, I felt a release I hadn't experienced in ages, as if I had finally taken off a suffocating mask I'd worn for far too long. When the Singaporean partner signed the final page of the contract, my palms were drenched in sweat. Marcus Thorne took the document, shook his counterpart's hand, and turned to me. Project Manager Harper, excellent work. Applause erupted in the boardroom. I could finally relax my shoulders, which had been tense for weeks. This $22 million project was the largest I had ever managed in my career. It's thanks to the whole team, I said, nodding to my colleagues, purposely brushing past Valerie's stony face. As soon as we left the room, Jenna hugged me tight. Oh my God, 22 million! The way the VP was looking at you was totally different. Don't be ridiculous, I said, gently pushing her away. Though I couldn't help but smile. I hadn't felt this validated in 3 years. After getting married, I had poured almost all my energy into serving the Sterling family, and my career had been something I merely survived. Now I felt like I had reclaimed the Harper who was once praised by her college professors as the student with the most potential. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Julian. Mom is admitted. County General, 8th floor. Room 23. Get here right now. I frowned reading it. After days of silence, his first contact was a direct order. What's wrong with her? I texted back. High blood pressure, dizziness, and vomiting. The reply was instantaneous. Doctor says she needs to be observed for a few days, so come take care of her. I have to go to work, he scoffed. The man who couldn't even bring me a glass of water when I was hospitalized was now demanding I play nurse. Harper, what's up? Jenna peeked at my phone and her eyes went wide. I don't believe this. Your mother-in-law is sick and he expects you to take care of her? Aren't you guys getting a divorce? You see, apparently until the papers are signed, I'm still expected to be the unpaid Florence Nightingale. I shoved the phone back in my pocket. Tell Marcus I'm taking the afternoon off. Please. I have to go to the hospital. The elevator at the local hospital was packed. The mix of disinfectant and bodily smells turned my stomach. In the 8th floor cardiology hallway, I spotted Julian leaning against the nurse's station from afar, playing a game on his iPhone. How is your mother? I asked, approaching him. He looked up with a surprised expression. He probably didn't expect me to actually show up. She's lying down in there. You go in and see her. I have to get back to the office. He turned to leave. Hold on a second. I stopped him. I took PTO for the afternoon, but I need to be back online later. Julian frowned. Harper, my mom is in the hospital. Is your little job really more important? If I don't work, are you going to support me? I shot back. Did you forget that your mother still holds the debit card to my direct deposit account? Julian's face flushed, and he lowered his voice. Mom is very sensitive right now, so watch what you say. I pushed open the door to the hospital room. Margaret was propped up in the bed, barking orders at my father-in-law to peel her an apple. Peel the skin thinner, Richard. You're wasting it, she shrieked. When she saw me walk in, she immediately started complaining. Oh, my head is splitting. There were 2 other elderly women in the shared room who looked at me curiously. You finally showed up, Harper? She said weakly. Julian called you, didn't he? I set my tote bag on a chair and asked, How are you feeling? How do you think I feel? She sighed dramatically. I'm sick because of you, turning everything upside down with this stupid divorce nonsense. I grabbed the plastic water pitcher. I'm going to go get some hot water. In the corner of the hallway, I took a few deep breaths. Talking to my mother-in-law was always like walking a tightrope. The slightest misstep would cause an explosion. There was a line at the water dispenser. I stood at the back and waited. My phone buzzed again. It was an automated text from Chase Bank. The debit card ending in 7,382 has been locked by the primary account holder. I stared at the screen, stunned. A tightness gripped my chest. That was the joint account card we opened after the wedding. Julian was the primary account holder. I deposited my paychecks there, and I paid the bills with it. But legally, his name was first. Quick to act when it suits them, I muttered. But I didn't feel as panicked as I expected. For the last 6 months, I had secretly opened an individual account at Bank of America and had been transferring a small emergency fund every month. With the performance bonus from this month's project, I could survive for a while. Returning to the room, Margaret was whining that the hospital food was bland. Harper, starting tomorrow, bring me home. Cooked meals. Maybe a low-sodium chicken soup. I set the pitcher down and said, Margaret, I'm incredibly busy at work right now. I don't think I'll have the time. Work? Margaret's voice jumped an octave. Is there anything more important than taking care of your family? The project I manage just closed, and I'm going to be even busier. The hospital provides nutritious meals. Or, you can ask Chloe to take care of you. I said evenly. Margaret's face turned gray. Harper, so my words mean absolutely nothing to you now? The elderly women in the adjacent beds were staring openly, and my father-in-law cleared his throat uncomfortably. Honey, the doctor said you shouldn't get worked up. She'll be thrilled when I'm dead. Margaret grabbed the box of Kleenex next to her and threw it at me. Get out. Get the hell out of here right now. The tissue box grazed my shoulder and hit the linoleum floor. A nurse rushed in upon hearing the commotion. What's going on? The patient needs to rest. Excuse me, I said to the nurse, and then to my mother-in-law. Get some rest, Margaret. I'll come back another time. Walking out of the room, my hands were trembling slightly. It wasn't from fear. It was a profound sense of liberation. I had finally said no. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, a hand shot out and stopped them. A tall man in a white doctor's coat hurried in. I instinctively stepped aside. "Harper?" the man said, surprised. I looked up and met a pair of smiling eyes. Beneath the white coat, a crisp navy dress shirt and silver tie gave him a distinguished look. "Ethan?" I recognized my old high school classmate. "Do you work here?" "Yeah, cardiothoracic surgery." "Are you visiting someone?" He pressed the lobby button. "My mother-in-law was admitted," I replied briefly. Then, as if remembering something, I added, "Hey, I heard you ended up going to law school." He smiled. "Joint degree program, MD, JD. I primarily work as an attorney specializing in medical malpractice and family law consulting now, but I do clinical rounds here a couple of days a week." The elevator reached the ground floor. "Want to grab a coffee?" he asked. It's been a long time. The hospital cafeteria wasn't too crowded. We sat by the window. Ethan handed me an iced vanilla latte. In high school, this was your go-to. I was a bit taken aback. "You still remember that?" "Of course," he smiled. "At the senior track meet, you almost passed out after running the 800-meter dash. I carried you to the nurse's station, and you begged me to buy you an iced latte." The memory flooded back, vivid and sharp. Back then, Ethan Caldwell was the class president, a star athlete, and top of the class every girl's crush. I was just a quiet, average student. "So, how are things now?" he asked. "I heard you got married." I swirled the ice in my cup. "I'm in the middle of filing for divorce." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Need some help?" "I handle high-asset divorces on the side." He pulled out a sleek business card and slid it across the table. "Call me anytime." The card read, "Ethan Caldwell, Esquire, Caldwell and Associates, LLP." The gold embossed lettering caught the sunlight. I tucked the card away carefully. "Thank you. I actually might need this." We chatted a bit more about old classmates. Then Ethan's iPhone rang. He glanced at the screen and stood up. "Sorry, emergency consult. Give me a call, okay?" "I will." After he rushed off, I sat alone for a moment. I checked my unread messages. Several more from Julian. "Did you piss off my mom? Doctor says her BP spiked again." I locked the joint card. "Are you ready to act like an adult now?" "Get over here tonight." Non-negotiable. The last one was from an hour ago. "Harper, if you don't pick up the phone, I'm coming to your office." I sighed and was about to reply when the phone rang. It was Marcus, my VP. "Harper, great news. The Malaysian client recommended us to a partner in Singapore. They are highly interested in our expansion blueprint. They want a video conference next week." "Really?" Really? That's fantastic." I sat up straight. Marcus paused. "They want you to personally oversee the entire rollout." My heart raced. "No problem. I'll start preparing the decks immediately." There was a note of amusement in Marcus's voice. "The board of directors has approved a 20% salary increase for you, effective next pay cycle." Hanging up, I couldn't suppress a huge smile. A 20% bump meant I could completely break free from the financial chokehold of the Sterling family. My phone buzzed again. It was Julian calling. This time, I answered calmly. "Harper, where the hell have you been?" His shouting made the people at the next table turn around. Sitting in the hospital cafeteria, I kept my voice perfectly level. "Julian, we need to talk." "Talk about what?" "The divorce." "Yeah," I said, watching the sunlight stream through the window. "I've retained a lawyer. You'll be served with a settlement agreement next week." There was a dead silence on the line for several seconds. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious," I said, taking a sip of the latte. "Oh, and thanks for locking the debit card. I was just planning to cancel it anyway. Harper. His voice suddenly sounded panicked. Don't act on impulse. You need to be here helping with Mom right now. We can talk about the divorce later. Let's hire a home health aide. I'll split the cost with you. I set the cup down. Sorry, but I have to get back to work. I hung up and opened my banking app to check the balance of my new individual account. It was enough to cover the retainer fee for Ethan and a few months' rent on a new apartment. I went to my contacts and found Ethan's name. If you're available, I'd love to schedule a divorce consultation as soon as possible. The reply was instant. How? Tomorrow at 3 p.m. at my firm. I'll text you the address. Walking out of the hospital, the sunlight was blinding. I took a deep breath. I felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my chest. The Sterlings thought cutting off my access to the marital funds would break me, but they had no idea that over the last 3 years, I had secretly been gathering my strength. Back at the office, Jenna pulled me into a corner. Guess what? Valerie got transferred to a regional branch. The VP announced in the all-hands meeting that the APAC expansion is exclusively your baby now. Really? I was stunned for a second. When did this happen? This afternoon, Jenna said excitedly. And Marcus said to swing by his office tomorrow morning. He's got something major to discuss. I nodded, but my mind was already on tomorrow's meeting with Ethan. The road to divorce would be brutal, especially dealing with people like the Sterlings, but strangely, I wasn't afraid. On the contrary, I felt a thrilling anticipation for the battle ahead. As I was leaving work, the receptionist called out to me. Harper, a package arrived for you. It was a small cardboard box. The return address was blank. Opening it, I found a few of my clothes and toiletries stuffed inside. Sitting on top was the locked joint debit card. There was no note, but the message was loud and clear. Julian was responding to my declaration of war. I scoffed, tossed the box in the trash, and kept only my personal items. Stepping out of the building, the night had already fallen, but the streetlights of Manhattan illuminated the path ahead. Caldwell and Associates was located on the 28th floor of an imposing glass skyscraper in Midtown. When the elevator doors opened, the view took my breath away. The entire floor featured floor-to-ceiling windows, flooding the sleek, modern office furniture and abstract art with golden afternoon light. Miss Harper? A young paralegal approached me. Mr. Caldwell is expecting you. She led me through an open-concept bullpen where suited attorneys were actively debating cases. At the end of the hall was a corner office. The frosted glass door read, Ethan Caldwell, Esquire, Partner. I knocked and heard his voice. Come in. Today, instead of a lab coat, he wore a tailored charcoal suit and a light gray dress shirt. He looked incredibly formidable. He gestured to the leather chair opposite his minimalist desk. Have a seat. What can I get you? Coffee? Sparkling water? Just water is fine. I set my bag down and unconsciously intertwined my fingers. Ethan buzzed his assistant for the water, then looked me squarely in the eyes. Walk me through the situation. For the next 30 minutes, I laid out the last 3 years of my marriage as objectively as possible. The emotional control from my mother-in-law, Julian's blatant indifference, the financial abuse, and the recent breaking point. When talking about the family photo incident, my voice accidentally wavered. Ethan didn't interrupt once. He just took precise notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he handed me a tissue box. It was only then I realized tears were sliding down my cheeks. First of all, his voice was calm and steadying. You need to understand that what you've experienced in this marriage, while unfortunately common, is textbook emotional and financial abuse. I wiped my eyes and nodded. Based on what you're telling me, the Sterling family has crossed several legal boundaries in the state of New Jersey, Ethan said, opening a legal binder. First, seizing control of your direct deposit account without equitable access constitutes financial abuse and misappropriation of marital assets. Second, Threatening to show up at your corporate office to cause a scene could justify a temporary restraining order. Third, relegating you to an unpaid domestic servant while legally married contradicts the basis of equitable partnership in a marriage. With every point he made, my eyes opened wider. Everything I had been conditioned to accept as my wifely duties was actually ammunition. The most important question, Ethan closed the binder, is if you are absolutely certain you want this divorce. A beam of sunlight from the skyline window fell onto the back of my hand. I looked at that little patch of light and slowly nodded. Yes, I am. Good. He woke his Mac. Then we proceed in 3 phases. Phase 1. Discovery and evidence gathering. Phase 2. Equitable distribution of assets. Phase 3. Custody. Do you have children? No. No kids? I shook my head. And I don't want a dime of his family's money. I just want back what is rightfully mine. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Are you sure about that? Legally, New Jersey is an equitable distribution state. You are entitled to a fair share of all assets acquired during the marriage. That includes the appreciation in value of the marital home. But the deed is only in Julian's name, but you bought it after you were married, and your parents provided half the down payment. Ethan pulled up a spreadsheet. We are absolutely going after that equity. I was stunned. For 3 years, Margaret had constantly reminded me that the condo belonged to the Sterlings. I never imagined I had any legal claim to it. Furthermore, Ethan continued, because you shouldered the entirety of the domestic labor while working full-time, we can argue for alimony or a disproportionate share of the assets as compensation. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a call from Marcus Thorne. I hesitated, but Ethan gestured for me to answer it. Harper, where are you? Marcus's voice sounded urgent. Julian Sterling is in the corporate lobby. He is extremely agitated. My stomach dropped. I'm on my way. I hung up and jumped out of the chair. I'm so sorry. I have to get to the office. My husband is... I'll drive you. Ethan already had his suit jacket on. During the ride downtown, nerves made my palms sweat. Julian had never come to my office before. Showing up unannounced meant nothing good. Relax, Ethan said at a red light, handing me a bottle of Fiji water from his console. I'm here. Those words inexplicably calmed me. I took a sip of water and regulated my breathing. The lobby of my firm was absolute chaos. From a distance, I could hear Julian shouting, Harper! Where is she? Tell her to get down here right now. Security guards were trying to de-escalate, but Julian, his eyes bloodshot, was thrashing around like a wild animal. I rushed over. Julian, what are you doing here? He spun around violently. Seeing Ethan standing right behind me, his face twisted into an ugly snarl. Ha! So this is why you weren't answering your phone. You were too busy screwing around with this guy. What the hell are you talking about? Rage made my entire body shake. This is Mr. Caldwell, my attorney. We were in a consultation. Attorney? Julian scoffed. Who do you think you're fooling? He suddenly lunged at me, grabbing the collar of my silk blouse. You bitch! My mother is bedridden in a hospital, and you're out on a date with some frat boy. He shoved me, and my shoulder slammed hard against the marble wall. Gasps echoed around the lobby, and someone yelled to call 911. Let her go, Ethan commanded, stepping forward. His voice was as cold as ice. Julian swung a wild punch at him. Back off, she's my wife, I'll do what I want. But the punch never landed. Ethan caught Julian's wrist midair and twisted it expertly into a joint lock. Julian let out a yelp of pain and released my blouse. Harper, you're having some guy assault me? Julian bellowed, trying to break free. By then, NYPD officers who patrol the corporate plazas rushed in. It took 3 cops to tackle Julian to the ground and cuff him. My blouse was torn and my hair was a mess. But strangely, I didn't feel fear, only a cold, burning rage. "I'd like to press charges," I told the responding officer. "He assaulted me." Julian, pinned to the floor, looked shocked. "Are you crazy? I'm your husband." "Not for long," I whispered. I adjusted my clothes and turned to Marcus, who had come rushing down the elevator bank. "Mr. Thorne, I am so sorry for the scene." Marcus looked from me to Julian being hauled out by the police. "Do you need assistance?" "We've got the NYPD handling it," Ethan interjected. The police took my statement, and Julian was dragged into a cruiser, screaming over his shoulder, "Harper, you'll regret this. I'm going to ruin your life." His voice faded into the siren wails, and the lobby finally returned to normal. My coworkers stared at me with a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. I kept my back straight and weathered their stares. "Harper." Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. "Come up to my office and take a breather." Ethan followed me up. Marcus poured us both a cup of green tea and gave us privacy. "Take your time. I'll oversee the project desk." As soon as the heavy oak door clicked shut, I broke down and buried my face in my hands. Ethan silently handed me a handkerchief. I took a deep, shuddering breath. "I need to file for a restraining order." A very smart decision. Ethan pulled out his phone. "I have a contact at the precinct. We'll expedite a temporary restraining order, TRO, by tonight." I looked up at him. "I'm going to take back everything that belongs to me." A faint smile touched Ethan's lips. "That's what I like to hear." "That's the Harper I remember from the varsity track team." I forced a smile. Back then, I had won the state 800-meter dash. But later, because Julian didn't want me to move out of state, I gave up an athletic scholarship to a top-tier university. What painful irony. The paperwork at the precinct moved faster than expected. Julian was held on a 2-4-hour domestic violence hold, and a judge signed the TRO. Ethan advised me not to return to the Sterling house under any circumstances, but my passport and social security card were still there. "You can request a civil standby with the police to retrieve your belongings," Ethan said. "It's too late today. We'll do it tomorrow." Returning to the short-term corporate apartment my firm set me up in, I checked my phone. Dozens of unread texts. Most were from Julian's extended family, calling me an immoral tramp for getting my husband arrested. I deleted them one by one and only replied to my parents. Jenna texted me a video clip. It was Julian making a scene in the lobby. His distorted, angry face contrasted sharply with my disheveled appearance. "Save this as evidence," Jenna wrote. I was about to reply when the phone rang. It was Marcus. "Harper. Good news. The Singapore partners officially approved the initial contract. They highly commend your professional handling of the crisis today." He paused. "And Human Resources has approved an executive assistant for you to lighten your load." "Thank you, Marcus." "Truly," I said. He hesitated for a second. "If you need any resources for your personal matters, do not hesitate to ask." I hung up and fired up my laptop. I started compiling an evidence log for the divorce. Direct deposit bank statements, logs of all the home repairs and groceries I paid for, and voice memos of Margaret's screaming matches. Over the last 3 years, without realizing it, I had accumulated a mountain of evidence. The next morning, I got a text from Ethan. 3 p.m. today. Police escort to the Sterling house to get your things. Does that work? Perfect. The morning strategy session was a massive success. The Singaporean executives confirmed the final integration details via Zoom. As it ended, Marcus pulled me aside. "Harper, the board has officially promoted you to Director of International Business, effective Monday." I was speechless. Director. That meant a significantly higher salary, stock options, and executive decision-making power, something unimaginable a month ago. "Thank you for believing in me," I managed to say. "With your talent, it was inevitable." Marcus smiled. Oh, and your new assistant starts tomorrow. Fresh out of undergrad, so train her well. Leaving the conference room, I texted Ethan. I got promoted to director. Congratulations. Looks like dumping the dead weight gave your career wings. I smiled and shook my head. Truly, breaking free from the Sterlings meant I could finally channel 100% of my energy into proving my worth. At 3 p.m., as agreed, 2 uniformed police officers were waiting for me outside my office building. Ethan was there too. He said he didn't trust me to go alone. The door to the Sterling house in the suburbs was deadbolted. We rang the bell, but no one answered. Just as the cops were about to call a locksmith, the door cracked open. It was Chloe. Well, if it isn't the high and mighty lawyer, she sneered. But seeing the NYPD officers, she blanched. Who are you guys? We're here on a civil standby to allow Miss Harper to retrieve her personal property, an officer said, tapping his badge. Please cooperate. Chloe reluctantly stepped aside. The house was an absolute pigsty. Takeout boxes from DoorDash piled on the dining table, dirty laundry scattered everywhere. Just a few days without me cleaning. And it turns into a landfill, I thought. I went straight to the master bedroom. My clothes in the walk-in closet had been rifled through, and half my expensive skincare was missing from the vanity. Opening a drawer, I found my passport, but my checkbook and a specific Bank of America debit card were missing. Chloe! I yelled down the hall. Where is my checkbook? Leaning against the doorframe, smacking her gum, she rolled her eyes. How should I know? Why are you asking me about stuff you probably lost? I turned to the police officer. My checkbook is missing. That account is where my payroll was deposited. The officer's expression instantly turned serious. Taking possession of someone's personal financial instruments without consent is grand larceny. We can initiate a formal investigation right now. Chloe's face tightened. Wait a minute. Let me call my brother. She grabbed her phone and scurried to the patio. I took the opportunity to check my jewelry box. A 2.4-carat gold necklace, a wedding gift from my mother, was missing. I snapped a photo of the empty velvet box and kept packing my essentials. 10 minutes later, Julian arrived with his mother. Seeing the police and Ethan, Julian's face darkened. Harper, he barked. How dare you bring cops to my house? I came to get my things, I said calmly. And my checkbook and gold necklace are missing. Who touched your cheap crap? Margaret shrieked. You probably lost them yourself and now you're framing us. Ethan stepped forward. Mr. Sterling, legally, disposing of or hiding marital assets without the spouse's consent during pending divorce proceedings will severely penalize you in the equitable distribution phase. The judge will sanction you. Julian looked paralyzed. Return the checkbook and the necklace, Ethan said, his voice low but carrying undeniable authority. Or we file felony theft charges right now. Margaret opened her mouth to scream again, but Julian stopped her. He pulled a checkbook out of his inner jacket pocket and threw it at me. Take it, like we even care. And the necklace? I pressed. Chloe, grimacing, unclasped the gold chain from her own neck. So stingy. I only wore it for a few days. I took the items, verified them, and shoved them in my bag. The police noted the exchange in their report and signaled that we could leave. Harper, Julian stopped me at the door. Do we really have to do this? I looked at his face, so familiar, yet so completely alien, and suddenly felt bone. Tired. Julian, let's just end this peacefully. Peacefully? He scoffed. You bring a guy and the cops to my house, and you call that ending it peacefully? Ethan gently tugged my arm. Let's go. Stepping out of the Sterling house, the sunlight blinded me again. So, this is how 3 years of marriage ends, I thought. Strangely, rather than grief, I felt the sheer relief of setting down a crushing burden. What's the next move? I asked Ethan in his car. We've secured the evidence. I file the formal divorce petition on Monday, he said, starting the engine. I want the equity money back from the house. Absolutely, I said, watching the suburban lawns blur past the window. No, actually, I just want to be done with this as quickly as possible. Ethan nodded. I understand, but you are not walking away from a single cent that you are legally entitled to. Back at the office. Jenna tiptoed over. Did you know you are a legend around here? The whole floor is talking about it. Seeing Julian get hauled off by the NYPD was epic. I shook my head. Stop gossiping and get back to work. Before logging off, I received an official company-wide email from Marcus announcing my promotion to director. Instantly, congratulatory slacks flooded my screen. As I replied to them, my mind was fixed on my next meeting with Ethan. The road to finalizing the divorce was still long, but at least I had taken the crucial first step. Monday morning, the digital billboard in the corporate lobby displayed the new executive appointments. My name, right next to Director of International Business, stood out clearly in white letters against the black background. Good morning, Director. The receptionist smiled at me. Her tone was notably respectful. I nodded slightly, though a part of me felt this was all surreal. Just weeks ago, I was the unpaid scullery maid for my in-laws, enduring relentless humiliation. Now, I was one of the youngest executives in the building. In the elevator, even employees from other floors whom I didn't know greeted me. Arriving at the executive suite, Jenna popped out of nowhere. Director, your new office is right this way. She led me down a carpeted hallway and pushed open a frosted glass door. It was a massive corner office with panoramic views of the Manhattan skyline. On the pristine mahogany desk sat a bouquet of orchids and a welcome card. This is... I touched the smooth surface of the desk, unable to finish my sentence. And there's something even better. Jenna winked mischievously. The VP will show you this afternoon. It's the corporate car allowance. I sat in the Herman Miller leather chair and spun around. From here, I could see the entire trading floor. 3 months ago, I was a cubicle drone working in silence. Now I had an entire division under my command. Next to my monitor was a dossier. It was the resume of my new assistant, Brianna Martin, 22, fresh out of NYU. As I was reading it, a soft knock came at the door. Come in. A young woman with a neat ponytail tentatively poked her head in. Good morning, Director. I'm Brianna Martin, your new EA. Come on in, I said, closing the folder. First, call me Harper. No formalities. And please grab me a black iced coffee. Then we'll talk workflow. Brianna nodded eagerly and hurried off. I opened Outlook. Among the dozens of unread emails, one marked urgent from Marcus caught my eye. 10 a.m. boardroom. Video conference with Singapore. After replying, Jenna poked her head in again. Harper, Marcus wants to see you. Marcus's office was even larger than mine. One entire wall was a built-in bookshelf, the other a floor-to-ceiling window. He was standing by the glass with his back turned, only pivoting when I walked in. Have a seat. He pointed to the leather sofa. Settling into the new office? Still processing it, honestly, I said. Thank you for the promotion. With your talent, it was natural. Marcus poured me a glass of San Pellegrino. The Singapore project is highly critical. The board expects this to be our beachhead for the entire APAC market. He paused. And the firm has allocated an executive vehicle for you to use for client meetings and commutes. I almost choked on the sparkling water. A car? Yes, we'll go down to the garage to see it this afternoon. He smiled. Don't look so shocked. Standard perk for directors. Oh, and next week, the Singaporean delegation is flying in for an on-site inspection. You are heading the welcoming committee. Any issues? None at all. I have a detailed itinerary drafted. Slowly, I began to relax. Marcus briefed me on the corporate vehicle policies and then shifted gears. How are your family matters proceeding? Legal proceedings are in motion, I replied briefly. I didn't want to bring personal drama into this office again. If you require assistance, let me know. The firm keeps an elite family law practice on retainer, he said, looking out the window. Thank you, but I've already retained excellent counsel. Marcus nodded and didn't pry further. Returning to the executive garage that afternoon, Marcus was waiting next to a gleaming, pearl-white Tesla Model 3. Here. He tossed me the key card. I caught it, my palms slightly sweaty. This car was leagues beyond my old beat-up Honda Civic, and it was a vehicle the company provided exclusively to me. Marcus slid into the passenger seat. Let's take it for a spin around the block. The Tesla glided out silently, the interior smelling of fresh vegan leather. I pulled out of the garage carefully, marveling at the smooth handling. Relax, it doesn't bite. Marcus chuckled. As the car merged onto the West Side Highway, I accelerated smoothly to test the torque. As we drove, Marcus kept the conversation focused entirely on APAC market strategy. When we returned to the corporate parking garage, just as I was shifting into park, I spotted two familiar figures lurking near the VIP elevator bank. It was Julian and my mother-in-law. Margaret. What's wrong? Marcus followed my gaze. It's my husband and my mother-in-law. My voice hardened. How the hell did they get past security? Marcus frowned and pulled out his phone to call the front desk. Before he could speak, Julian spotted us and marched over with long, aggressive strides. Margaret trailed behind him, her face contorted in fury. Harper! Julian slammed his fist on the hood of the Tesla. And now you're screwing your boss in the parking garage? I immediately locked the doors and pulled out my phone. If you cause another scene, I am calling the cops to enforce the restraining order. Police? Margaret shrieked, looking deranged. What did my son ever do to you for you to treat him like this? Now that you've found yourself a sugar daddy, you want to throw my boy away like trash? Marcus stepped out of the car. Excuse me, this is private corporate property. Watch your language. Oh, so the lover boy steps up to defend her. Julian scoffed. Mr. VP, do you know this woman is still legally married, and you're taking her out on joyrides? A small crowd of employees returning to their cars had started to gather. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the Tesla. Julian, we do not live together, and we are actively in divorce proceedings. Leave right now, or I will have you arrested for violating a court order. Restraining order? Margaret lunged forward to grab my hair. You insolent brat! I dodged. And she stumbled, nearly eating the concrete. Seeing this, Julian swung a punch at me. Marcus stepped between us. That is enough! Security! He yelled toward the elevators. Get security down here immediately! Several burly security guards heard the shouting and sprinted over, restraining Julian and pushing Margaret back. Margaret threw herself onto the garage floor and started wailing at the top of her lungs. This is the ultimate disrespect. A daughter-in-law beating her elderly mother-in-law? Julian pointed a finger at me as the guards dragged him away. Harper, you wait, you won't get away with this. My entire body was trembling. I barely managed to apologize to Marcus before sprinting to the executive restroom. I splashed cold water on my face to calm my racing heart. My reflection was pale, my lips shaking. How did Julian find out about my promotion? And how did he pinpoint my parking spot? There had to be a mole inside the company. Stepping out of the restroom, Jenna was waiting with a deeply concerned look. Harper, are you okay? The whole firm knows. Somebody recorded Julian causing a scene in the garage and posted it in the company Slack channel. I closed my eyes. It doesn't matter. Back in my office, I immediately called Ethan to explain the situation. The video is crucial evidence, he said. If we can prove they threatened you, it solidifies the necessity of making the restraining order permanent. I hung up and tasked Brianna with requisitioning the official security footage from building management. Then I forced myself to stare at my monitors. The Singapore presentation still needed polishing. I refused to let Julian sabotage my performance. At 3 p.m., I arrived at Ethan's law firm. He was already watching a video on his monitor. When I walked in, he turned the screen toward me. It was the security footage my company had sent over. The HD camera perfectly captured Julian swinging a punch and Margaret attempting to assault me. Perfect. Ethan paused the playback. With this, the permanent restraining order is a slam dunk. I nodded and pulled up an image on my phone. I also have this. It was a photo Chloe had sent me anonymously. Ethan took the phone and raised an eyebrow. Proof of infidelity. And the timestamp is from last Friday. He scoffed, fresh out of a holding cell, and already shacked up with a blonde at a Marriott. Guy's got nerve. Why is Chloe helping me? I asked, bewildered. Sibling rivalry, probably. Ethan transferred the photo to his secure server. Regardless, this is massively advantageous. Legally, proving he is the at-fault party through adultery and abuse gives us incredible leverage in asset distribution and alimony denial. He opened a thick manila folder. This is the draft of the divorce petition. Look it over. I carefully read the legal document that would permanently alter my life. The grounds for divorce included domestic violence, adultery, and extreme cruelty. Financial abuse. The asset distribution section specifically demanded the return of my hijacked payroll funds, my wedding gifts, and 50% of the equity in the marital home. It looks good, I said, signing the last page. Suddenly, a profound exhaustion washed over me. The bitterness of the last 3 years crashed over me like a tidal wave, and my eyes reddened. Ethan silently offered me a box of tissues. I took a few deep breaths to control my emotions. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm crying. You don't have to apologize, he said gently. Divorce is a brutal process for anyone. I wiped my eyes. I just don't understand it. Why did they have to do this to me? I gave everything to that family, and in return, some people don't know how to value what they have, Ethan said, closing the folder. Your worth is not defined by them. Leaving the law firm, it was already dark. Standing outside the skyscraper, watching the endless stream of yellow cabs, I felt suddenly lost. Should I go back to the empty corporate apartment or head back to the office to work late? My phone vibrated. A text from Chloe. Watch your back. Mom and Julian paid some freelance paparazzi to crash your office tomorrow. I replied instantly. They already came today. Why are you telling me this? Her reply chilled me. Because my brother screwed me over too. The money he promised to help me pay off my student loans. He blew it all on that girl in the hotel. I shook my head and pocketed the phone. The internal civil war of the Sterling family was no longer my problem. My only mission now was to win this divorce and sever ties with them forever. The next morning, the head of corporate security came to my office personally. He informed me that security protocols in the garage and lobby had been elevated to level 3. No unbadged personnel could pass the turnstiles. Marcus also sent a company-wide memo reiterating zero tolerance for workplace harassment and prioritizing employee safety. At lunch, Jenna dragged me to the break room. Did you see the anonymous post on the internal corporate forum? I shook my head. I rarely checked it. Someone posted a long editorial. The title is, How Corporate America Must Protect Female Executives Facing Domestic Abuse. It doesn't use names, but everyone knows it's about you. She handed me her iPhone. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, and the CEO himself had even liked the post. The writing was sharp, analyzing the double burden working women face at home and in the office. Who do you think wrote it? I asked. Jenna lowered her voice. It's anonymous, but I think it was the VP. The writing style sounds exactly like Marcus's keynote speech from the holiday gala last year. I reflected on that and nodded. If Marcus really wrote it, it meant upper management was publicly backing me. For a woman in the middle of a messy public divorce, that support was priceless. That afternoon, I received a text from Ethan. Tro is finalized and served. A process server just handed Julian the papers. I file the divorce petition tomorrow morning. Short and to the point. But I felt a massive boulder lift from my shoulders. The formal initiation of the legal process meant I was one step closer to freedom. After work, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my corner office, watching the Manhattan skyline turn orange in the sunset. Over the past 3 years of marriage, I had almost forgotten who I was. The Harper who won academic scholarships and broke track records had been buried alive. Now, after the betrayal and the pain, I was finally digging her out. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "Harper, how dare you file a restraining order? You just wait. I'm going to ruin your fucking life." Without replying, I took a screenshot, emailed it to Ethan, and deleted the thread. From today on, my life was no longer at the mercy of the Sterlings. Come what may, I was ready for war. The day of the Singaporean delegation's visit, I woke up at 5 a.m. It was pitch black outside. I got up quietly so as not to wake Jenna, who was sleeping in the guest room of my corporate apartment. We had prepped presentation decks until midnight. The dark circles under my eyes looked like I had gone around with Mike Tyson. I slapped on some cooling gel eye patches and reviewed my pitch notes one last time. 3 months ago, I was a cubicle worker writing scripts for someone else to read. Today, I was spearheading negotiations with foreign dignitaries. "Why are you up so early?" Jenna appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "It's barely 6:30, giving the APAC rollout plan a final pass," I said, peeling off the eye patches and applying vitamin C serum. "This contract is make or break for the division." Jenna yawned. "You've overprepared. Even Marcus said it's bulletproof." Suddenly remembering, she added, "Oh, right. The restraining order against Julian is active. A process server handed it to him yesterday. He legally can't come within 500 feet of you or the building." "I know," I said, applying my lipstick. "That's awesome." Jenna seemed more hyped than I was. "That creep can't bother you anymore." I smiled, but a sliver of anxiety remained. The Julian I knew wasn't the type to surrender quietly. At 7 a.m. sharp, the black corporate SUV idled outside my building. The driver opened the door. "Good morning, Director." I slid into the back seat and triple-checked the leather portfolio. Contracts, rollout blueprints, budget projections, nothing was missing. The SUV merged into gridlock traffic. Staring at the rushing pedestrians on the sidewalks, I remembered who I was 3 years ago. A newlywed, waking up at dawn to cook Julian a hot breakfast, squeezing onto a packed subway train, and rushing back at night to cater to his demanding family. It felt like a past life. In the corporate lobby, a massive welcome banner was already suspended. Executives were adjusting floral arrangements. As I walked toward the VIP elevators, a screeching voice erupted behind me. "Harper, you shameless tramp!" I froze. The voice was unmistakable. Turning around, I saw my mother-in-law, Margaret, sprinting toward me in her hideous eggplant-colored trench coat, looking absolutely unhinged. Behind her, 3 aggressive-looking men with DSLR cameras and iPhones were filming her. The lobby security guards tried to tackle her, but she slipped past them like a greased pig and planted herself right in front of me. "Look, everybody, this is the woman who sleeps with her boss, abandons her husband, and then calls the cops on him to steal his house." Her shrill voice echoed off the marble walls. Every single person in the lobby froze and stared at us. My face burned, but I forced my spine straight. "Mrs. Sterling, the restraining order extends to his immediate proxies. Leave this building immediately, or I'm pressing charges." "Call them!" Margaret threw herself onto the polished floor and began weeping hysterically. "What an injustice! A daughter-in-law abusing her sick mother-in-law. Record everything, boys. Put it on TikTok." The men with the cameras swarmed me, shoving lenses inches from my face. I backed up until I hit the reception desk. "What the hell are you doing?" Jenna materialized, throwing herself in front of me as a shield. "Security. Get these trespassers out of here right now." The head of security sprinted over with 4 massive guards, but with Margaret writhing on the floor, they hesitated to use physical force on an elderly woman. The crowd of onlookers swelled, and camera flashes blinded me. Just then, the elevator pinged. Marcus Thorne stepped out. "What is the meaning of this?" Seeing him, Margaret leaped up and pointed a bony finger at his chest. "So you're the sugar daddy who brainwashed my daughter-in-law." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Ma'am, that allegation constitutes defamation. Security, escort these individuals out. If they resist, call the NYPD. Look at them. The adulterers are teaming up to abuse an old woman," Margaret screamed, reaching into her oversized purse. She pulled out a stack of glossy 8x10 photos and hurled them into the air. "Look at the proof." The photos fluttered down like snow. I picked one up, and the blood drained from my face. It was a photo of Marcus and me in the Tesla in the parking garage. He was leaning over from the passenger seat, his face inches from mine, making it look exactly like we were kissing. But I knew the truth. He had dropped a folder of quarterly reports and was simply leaning over to pick it up. "This is a lie." My body shook with fury. "It's the angle. We have no inappropriate—" "Harper!" a voice roared from the revolving doors. Julian marched in, flanked by 2 sleazy-looking men who looked like tabloid bloggers. He wore a smug, victorious sneer. "How does it feel? Being publicly humiliated for the tramp you are?" I pointed at him. "You're violating a federal restraining order. I'm an independent journalist covering a breaking corporate scandal," one of the bloggers said, waving his press pass with a malicious grin. "Public spaces are for everyone, right?" The lobby was pure anarchy. Security guards, gawkers, the Sterlings, and paparazzi were a tangled mess. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from the Singaporean delegation. "We are pulling up to the building now." "Marcus." I turned to him, my voice trembling. "The clients. You go up and prepare for the pitch," he said with absolute calm. "I will handle this trash." I nodded. As I turned, Julian lunged and grabbed my wrist. "Where do you think you're going? Today this whole company is going to see your true face." His fingers dug into my skin like iron vices. The pain brought tears to my eyes. Jenna tried to pry him off, but couldn't. "Enough." A booming voice thundered from the VIP elevator bank. Everyone turned in unison. The CEO of our multinational firm strode forward, flanked by general counsel and upper management. "What is this circus?" Julian instinctively dropped my wrist, and I stumbled backward. The CEO scanned the chaos and locked eyes on the scattered photos. "What is this? Garbage. Evidence!" Margaret screeched. "Proof your executive is sleeping with my daughter-in-law." The CEO picked up a photo, adjusted his glasses, and scoffed. "Ma'am, I am the chief executive officer of this corporation. These photos are maliciously doctored using forced perspective. This is blatant defamation." He turned a lethal glare on Julian. "And you, harassing a victim who holds an active restraining order against you on corporate property is a Class E felony. Our legal team is pressing corporate espionage and harassment charges." Julian's face went white. "Sir, it's a misunderstanding." "Security," the CEO commanded, not looking at him again. "Lock down the doors. Nobody leaves until the NYPD arrives. Confiscate all recording equipment. Delete the footage." The police arrived in 3 minutes. Julian and Margaret were slapped in handcuffs and dragged out, screaming obscenities. The bloggers, realizing they were facing corporate lawyers, had tried to bolt but were detained. "Director Harper?" The CEO turned to me, his tone shifting to pure professionalism. "The Singapore clients will be upstairs in 10 minutes. Are you prepared?" I took a deep breath, smoothed down my blazer, and lifted my chin. "Yes, sir. I am fully prepared." "Excellent." The CEO nodded. "Do not let this riffraff distract you from your objective." I gave him a look of deep gratitude and walked to the elevator, Jenna followed, whispering, "Holy crap, the CEO is a total badass." I forced a smile, but a lead weight settled in my stomach. Julian and Margaret's ambush today was far more coordinated than I expected. Those photos were planned weeks in advance. In the boardroom, I touched up my makeup and reviewed the slides. Brianna sprinted in. "Harper, the Singaporean clients are in the reception area." "Perfect." I stood up. "Positions, everyone." For the next 2 hours, I locked the morning's trauma in a mental vault and dominated the presentation. The lead Singaporean executive, a sharp man in his 50s, fired aggressive questions at me, but I countered every single one flawlessly. When he finally signed the binding LOI, letter of intent, I exhaled. "Director Harper," he said, shaking my hand warmly. "Your poise under pressure is remarkable. I look forward to a highly profitable partnership." After escorting the clients out, my silk shirt was soaked with sweat. Marcus walked over and clapped my shoulder. "Phenomenal job. The CEO is thrilled." "Thank you." I smiled weakly. "The circus downstairs is handled." He lowered his voice. "Julian was booked for violating a restraining order, assault, and public endangerment. He is going to Rikers Island. He's looking at real time." I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious. That Julian was finally facing justice was right, but the fact that my life had devolved into police and arrests weighed heavily on my soul. Back in my office, I locked the door, slumped against the mahogany desk, and finally let the tears fall. 3 years of marriage, ending in a police standoff. I cried silently until a soft knock startled me. "Come in." Brianna peeked in. "Harper? An attorney named Ethan Caldwell is waiting in the executive lounge." I wiped my face quickly. "Tell him I'll be right out." In the executive washroom, I splashed cold water on my puffy eyes and reapplied my lipstick. The woman in the mirror looked exhausted, but her gaze was lethal. This is the path I chose, I thought. No matter how ugly it gets, I am seeing it through to the end. Ethan was waiting on a leather sofa in the lounge. Seeing me, he stood up immediately. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. "What are you doing here?" "I saw the police scanner alerts about an incident at your corporate address." I got worried. He handed me a thick legal folder. "But I come bearing gifts." The judge expedited the divorce docket. "The preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks." I took the folder. "That's incredibly fast. The evidence of abuse is overwhelming. And after Julian's little stunt today violating the TRO, the judge greenlit the fast track." Ethan paused, a glint in his eye. "Oh, and I subpoenaed Julian's medical records. I found his fertility report." "What?" My eyes widened. "He's sterile?" Ethan nodded. "It's a lab report from 3 years ago. It shows his sperm motility is at absolute zero. What's legally fascinating is that for your entire marriage, his family gaslit you into believing you were the one who couldn't have children." The room spun. Suddenly, all the puzzle pieces snapped together. Why Margaret constantly made snide remarks about hens that can't lay eggs. Why Julian violently refused to go to couples fertility testing. Even Chloe's sudden betrayal of her brother made sense. This, my voice shook. "Does this help us in court?" "Massively," Ethan scoffed. "For 3 years, they subjected you to extreme emotional cruelty based on a lie to cover for his infertility. It proves malicious intent. A judge will crucify them in the asset distribution phase." I took a deep breath, trying to process this bombshell. All the insults, the guilt, the depression I suffered, it was all a manufactured lie to manipulate and control me. "Furthermore," Ethan added, "Chloe agreed to testify on your behalf. She'll state under oath that the Sterling family engaged in a coordinated campaign of psychological abuse." "Why?" "Family civil war, I guess." Ethan shrugged. "She didn't give me the exact motive, but it's a goldmine for us." We moved to a quiet conference room. Ethan walked me through the discovery file. The photos of Julian's hotel rendezvous, the medical reports, the audio recordings of Margaret. This is more than enough to establish Julian as the at-fault party, Ethan said. You'll get the lion's share of the marital estate. I just want to be done with this, I said, rubbing my temples. I don't want his money. Getting my down payment back is enough. Ethan shook his head, his lawyer persona taking over. Harper, this isn't just about money, it's about justice. Punitive damages. They have to pay for what they did to you. After a moment of silence, I asked, where is Julian right now? Central booking. Ethan checked his Rolex. Violation of a TRO, assault, trespassing. He's going to be sitting in a cell for at least 48 hours before he sees a bail judge. He brought it on himself, I murmured, yet my chest felt hollow. How ironic that the man I once shared a bed with had morphed into a monster I needed police protection from. After work, I declined Jenna's invitation for drinks and went back to my corporate apartment alone. As soon as I walked in, my phone rang. Unknown caller. Hello? I answered cautiously. Harper? Margaret's screech pierced my eardrum. Are you happy now? Do you feel good about yourself now that my son is rotting in a jail cell? Mrs. Sterling, I said coldly. If Julian broke the law, that is his responsibility, not mine. Do not contact me again, or I will file a harassment suit against you as well. You, she sputtered in rage. You think you're untouchable because your fancy company protects you? Well, I already gave my exclusive story to the New York Post. You'll be on page 6 tomorrow. Do whatever you want. I hung up and blocked the number. After a hot shower, I sat on the bed and opened X, Twitter. A video of the morning's lobby incident was already going viral with a clickbait caption, Wife assaults mother-in-law after being caught cheating with VP. The comments were a cesspool of misogyny calling me a gold digger, and someone had already doxed my LinkedIn profile. I started trembling. The familiar sensation of suffocation gripped my throat. For 3 years, enduring this kind of gaslighting was my daily reality. I didn't think I'd have to drown in it again while trying to escape. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. I saw the Twitter video. Do not panic. I am issuing a cease and desist and a formal press release tomorrow morning from my firm. We will leak the verified infertility report to counter their narrative. We control the story. I replied, thank you, and opened my laptop. I forced myself to prepare the Singapore integration files. Work was my armor. As long as I was working, the noise couldn't touch me. Late into the night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything played in my mind like a movie. Margaret's tantrums, Julian's malice, the doctored photos, the fertility lie. My marriage was built on a foundation of sociopathic deception. They knew he was sterile, yet they blamed me, using it as leverage to destroy my self-worth. Realizing this, a rage I had never known ignited in my blood. No, I will not roll over, I thought. Ethan is right. It's not about the money. It's about justice. The Sterlings are going to pay for every tear I shed. I grabbed my phone and texted Ethan. I've made my decision. In court, we take them for everything we legally can. No mercy. His reply was instant. That's what I like to hear. That's the varsity track star I know. Good night. I put the phone down. For the first time in weeks, I felt profound inner peace. Whatever happened next, I was ready for war. And this time, I wouldn't yield an inch. Standing on the steps of the New York State Supreme Court building, I paused to look at the imposing granite pillars. The morning sun glared off the gold lettering, blinding me. Nervous? Ethan stepped up beside me, carrying a heavy leather litigation briefcase. I took a deep breath. A little. Remember, the truth and the law are on our side. He patted my shoulder. When today is over, you will be free. Free. The word tasted strange but incredibly sweet. For 3 years, I had forgotten how to breathe freely. The courthouse rotunda was a beehive of activity: suited lawyers, stressed plaintiffs, and a smattering of reporters sniffing around for gossip. I pulled the brim of my sunglasses down and followed Ethan toward family court. Part 5. Harper! A shrill voice echoed behind me. I froze. I didn't even need to turn around. My mother-in-law, Margaret, dressed in her signature eggplant coat, charged at me like a bull. Right behind her were Julian, out on bail, and his defense attorney. "You wretched bitch! How dare you show your face here?" She screamed, pointing her finger at my nose. "What did my son ever do to justify you destroying his life?" Julian was wearing an ill-fitting suit. His face was as dark as a thundercloud. He tried to pull his mother back. "Mom, not here." "Why not here? Let everyone see her." Margaret yanked her arm away, raising her voice. "After eating our food and sleeping under our roof, now she wants to steal our family's hard-earned money." People in the hallway stopped to stare, pulling out their phones. My face burned, but I forced my spine straight. Ethan stepped neatly between us. "Ma'am, please watch your words. This courthouse is monitored by federal security. Your outbursts will merely serve as Exhibit A for our punitive damages claim." "And who the hell are you?" Margaret pivoted to Ethan. "Oh, you're the sugar daddy lawyer who brainwashed my daughter-in-law." "Mom!" Julian yelled to shut her up, then shot me a look of pure ice. "Harper, does it really have to end in a bloodbath?" I looked him dead in the eye. "You brought the blood?" "I just brought the mop." Silence in the corridor. A court bailiff commanded. "Docket 402, Sterling v. Sterling. All parties and counsel, enter the courtroom. Spectators maintain silence." Margaret opened her mouth to scream again, but Julian dragged her by the arm into the courtroom. I took a deep breath, buttoned my tailored blazer, and followed Ethan inside. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined, but the atmosphere was suffocatingly solemn. The judge's mahogany bench loomed at the front. I sat at the petitioner's table with Ethan. My palms were sweating, and I kept wiping them on a tissue. Julian and his sleazy-looking lawyer sat opposite us, while Margaret sat in the front gallery row, glaring daggers at the back of my head. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Eleanor Vance, a stern woman in her 50s with short silver hair, took the bench and banged her gavel once. "Be seated. We are here for the dissolution of marriage, an equitable distribution hearing for Harper Sterling versus Julian Sterling." Petitioner. Opening statements. Ethan stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. "Your Honor, my client Harper entered into marriage with the respondent Julian Sterling 3 years ago. However, from the inception of this marriage, the respondent and his family have subjected my client to severe emotional abuse, coercive financial control, and domestic violence. With surgical precision, Ethan laid out the horrors of the last 3 years: the hijacking of my direct deposit, the forced domestic servitude, the systematic destruction of my self-esteem, and the ultimate betrayal hiding Julian's clinical infertility while gaslighting me into believing I was barren. And most egregiously, Ethan's voice boomed through the courtroom, when my client sought a divorce, the respondent escalated to physical violence, resulting in an active permanent restraining order and pending felony charges. Judge Vance frowned as she reviewed the evidentiary binders. At the defense table, Julian's face was ashen, his fists clenched tight. "Lies!" Margaret screamed from the gallery. "Your Honor, he's lying!" "Silence in my courtroom!" Judge Vance banged her gavel sharply. "One more outburst, ma'am, and the bailiffs will remove you." Ethan concluded. "Therefore, we request Your Honor grant the absolute divorce, assign 100% fault to the respondent, and award my client a disproportionate share of the marital assets, plus punitive damage for extreme cruelty." It was Julian's lawyer's turn. He stood up, a smarmy man who oozed fake sincerity. "Your Honor, my client married Miss Harper for love. This entire ordeal is a tragic misunderstanding. He attempted to paint me as a gold-digging opportunist who, upon landing a lucrative executive promotion, decided to discard her devoted husband. He even had the audacity to hint at the fabricated affair with my VP, Marcus Thorne. My whole body trembled with rage. Ethan squeezed my arm under the table. "Stay calm. We're up next." Julian's lawyer finished with, "My client is willing to generously forgive Miss Harper's transgressions and wishes for a chance at marital mediation." Judge Vance looked over her glasses at me. "Petitioner, are you amenable to court-ordered mediation?" "Absolutely not, Your Honor," I said firmly. "Very well. We will proceed to evidentiary exhibits," the judge said. "Petitioner, present your evidence." Ethan moved swiftly. He queued up the corporate garage security footage, showing Julian physically assaulting me. Then he displayed the paparazzi photos Margaret had thrown in the lobby. "Your Honor, the defense alleges an affair based on these photos. However, we have submitted the unedited security footage from that exact timestamp, proving my client's supervisor was merely leaning over to retrieve dropped documents. This is a coordinated smear campaign." And then came the kill shot, the infertility report. When the lab results from 3 years ago flashed on the court monitor, Julian vaulted out of his chair. "That's a forgery." "Sit down, Mr. Sterling," Judge Vance warned. "Counsel, is this document authenticated?" "Subpoenaed directly from Mount Sinai Hospital, Your Honor." Ethan presented the notarized seal. "According to the medical record, the respondent's sperm motility is virtually zero. Conception is impossible. Yet, for 3 years, the respondent and his family inflicted severe psychological torture on my client, labeling her as barren to manipulate and control her." A collective gasp echoed in the gallery. Margaret's face drained of all color, turning a sickly white. Julian collapsed into his chair, as if the spine had been ripped out of him. But Ethan wasn't done. We also enter into evidence proof of chronic adultery. Photos of Julian walking into various Marriott and Hilton hotels with multiple different women populated the screen. The timestamps spanned from 6 months after our wedding to just last week. "Harper, you bitch!" Julian roared. "You spied on me?" "Respondent." The judge's voice cracked like a whip. "One more word and I will hold you in contempt of court." Ethan systematically laid down the rest of the hammer. Bank statements showing the diversion of my income, expense logs, and the horrifying audio recordings of Margaret screaming at me. Every piece of evidence was a nail in the Sterling family's coffin. Julian's lawyer tried to object, stuttering weakly about invasion of privacy and hospital errors. But it was useless. "If it was a hospital error," Ethan scoffed, "why did the respondent refuse to take a follow-up test for 3 years? Why did he subject his wife to invasive natural fertility treatments while knowing his own diagnosis?" Judge Vance nodded thoughtfully. "Petitioner, you may take the stand." I stood up, took the oath, and sat in the witness box. My legs felt like jelly, but my voice was surprisingly steady. "Your Honor, when I married Julian Sterling, I genuinely intended to build a life with him. I calmly recounted the 3 years of purgatory, sticking purely to the facts. The public humiliation by my mother-in-law, the total dismissal from my husband, being treated as the unpaid hired help. My throat tightened. But I swallowed the emotion and continued. I endured it for 3 years, not out of weakness, but because I still believed in the sanctity of my vows. But I realize now that this marriage was a fraud from day one. Julian didn't want a wife. He wanted free domestic labor for his mother, and a scapegoat to hide his own medical infertility. "Lies!" Julian shouted again. "Bailiff, secure the respondent," the judge ordered. "Last warning, I have zero ambition to take the Sterling family's wealth," I concluded, looking directly at the judge. "I only want what is equitably mine. The down payment my parents provided for the marital home, the wages I earned that were stolen from me, and fair compensation for 3 years of forced domestic servitude." When I stepped down from the stand, I let out a massive breath. I had finally exorcised the poison I'd held inside for years. "Respondent, your witness," the judge said. Julian's lawyer stood up, sweating. Before he could speak, Ethan raised his hand. Your Honor, the petitioner calls one final rebuttal witness. Call your witness. The heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. In walked Chloe. Today, completely devoid of makeup, wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, she looked like a totally different person. Julian and Margaret's eyes nearly popped out of their skulls. Chloe, what the hell are you doing? Margaret shrieked. Ignoring them completely, Chloe walked to the stand and took the oath. I swear to tell the truth. Ethan approached the podium. Miss Sterling? You are the biological sister of the respondent, Julian Sterling? Yes. Why have you agreed to testify on behalf of the petitioner? Chloe took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. Because I can't watch this anymore. What my mother and brother did to my sister-in-law is pure evil. In the gallery, Margaret let out a strangled gasp, clamping her hands over her mouth as a bailiff stepped toward her. Her eyes, however, burned with murderous intent. Chloe detailed under oath how the Sterling family systematically abused me. My mother controlled Harper's paychecks. She wasn't allowed to go out. She was berated over dust on the baseboards. They destroyed her self-esteem over the fertility issue. Chloe looked up at the judge. My brother knew he was sterile before the wedding. He hid it from Harper and actively blamed her. He even forced her to drink these disgusting herbal concoctions to fix her ovaries. Chloe, you traitor! Julian lost his mind, lunging toward the witness box. Two bailiffs tackled him to the floor instantly. Bang, bang, bang! Court is in recess for 10 minutes. Judge Vance shouted over the chaos. Remove the respondent to a holding cell until he can behave. During the recess, Ethan led me to a private consultation room and handed me a bottle of water. You did incredibly well. We have them backed into a corner. Chloe. I still couldn't process it. Why did she do it? A guilty conscience? Revenge over stolen money? Who cares? Ethan shrugged, adjusting his tie. Her testimony under oath just won us the case. 10 minutes later, court resumed. Julian, warned by the bailiffs, sat in stony silence, his lawyer looking completely defeated. In his closing argument, Ethan was relentless. Your Honor, the facts are irrefutable. The respondent and his proxies subjected my client to extreme psychological warfare, financial theft, and physical violence. He committed egregious marital fraud regarding his fertility and engaged in chronic adultery. We ask the court to dissolve this marriage immediately and rule decisively in favor of the innocent spouse. Julian's lawyer offered a pathetic closing, mumbling about standard marital friction and asking for leniency. Judge Vance didn't even leave the bench to deliberate. The evidence in this matter is overwhelming and the facts are clear. The marital bond is irrevocably broken. I am granting the absolute divorce immediately. Regarding the equitable distribution of assets and punitive damages, I will issue a written judgment within 2 weeks. Court is adjourned. It was the ultimate victory. The divorce was granted. The only thing left was the math. As we exited the courtroom, Julian and Margaret tried to ambush me in the hallway like rabid dogs, but the NYPD bailiffs formed a wall. Harper! You're going to burn in hell for this! Margaret screamed, spittle flying from her lips. You turned my own daughter against me. You just wait. Julian's glare was even more chilling. You think this is over? Watch your back. Ethan shielded me with his body, and we quickly walked to the elevators. Ignore them. It's the death rattle of a cornered animal. Stepping out onto the steps of the courthouse, the midday sun enveloped me. I took a deep breath of the polluted, chaotic New York air. It tasted like absolute freedom. Though the final financial ruling was pending, I had survived the darkest chapter of my life. What's next? I asked Ethan as we walked down the steps. The written judgment drops in 2 weeks. He checked his watch. Based on Vance's demeanor today, the asset split will be heavily skewed in your favor. She despises financial abusers. I nodded. At the bottom of the steps, A familiar white Tesla was idling at the curb. Marcus Thorne leaned against the passenger door, waving at us. "Marcus? What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised. "Wanted to see if you survived the gauntlet," he said smoothly. "How did it go?" "Flawlessly," Ethan answered for me, his tone shifting to a professional, protective lawyer mode. "The divorce is granted. The asset distribution will highly favor my client." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Get in. I'll give you a ride back to the office." In the car, Marcus briefly asked about the trial logistics before smoothly shifting into corporate mode. "How is the Singapore integration progressing?" "Proceeding ahead of schedule." I briefed him on the latest milestones. "The APAC partners are thrilled with Phase 1. "Excellent." Marcus paused, looking at me in the rearview mirror. "The board of directors is floating the idea of having you oversee the entire Southeast Asia rollout. Are you interested?" I froze. "The entire Southeast Asia rollout. It would require you to relocate to Singapore for 6 months to build the regional team from the ground up," he added. "Assuming, of course, your personal legal matters allow for international travel." I stared at the Manhattan skyline blurring past the window. A divorce. A massive promotion. A new life across the globe. Everything was coming so fast it felt like a hallucination. But it wasn't. It was the new reality I had fought tooth and nail to secure. "I need some time to think about it," I managed to say. "Of course," Marcus nodded. "Take your time, but the offer stands." The Tesla dropped me off at my corporate apartment. When I got out, Ethan got out as well. "Call me the second the judgment hits my inbox. I'll let you know." "Thank you, Ethan." I looked up at him sincerely. "I wouldn't have survived this without you." He smiled warmly. "You survived because of your own grit. I just handed you the legal sledgehammer." Back in my quiet apartment, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the plush sofa. I had dozens of Slack messages and texts from Jenna and my team asking for updates. I replied to a few, then opened a text from Chloe. "I'm sorry for everything. I was just jealous that you were smarter and more independent than I ever could be. I think today is the first time I've ever done the right thing." I stared at the text for a long time before replying, "Thank you for your courage today. Take care of yourself." I put the phone down and walked out onto the balcony. The sun was setting over the Hudson River, painting the water in brilliant strokes of gold and crimson. For the first time in 3 years, my heart felt light. Regardless of the final financial settlement, my new life had already begun. Judge Vance's ruling arrived earlier than expected. 10 days later, just as I was logging onto my computer at the office, Ethan called. "The judgment is in." His voice vibrated with excitement. Total legal annihilation. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. "Tell me everything. Divorce is absolute. The condo goes entirely to you, though you'll have to buy out Julian's minor equity share based on the original down payment ratio. The funds stolen from your direct deposit must be reimbursed in full, with interest. And..." Ethan took a breath. "Judge Vance awarded you $75,000 in punitive damages for extreme emotional cruelty and fraud." I slumped back in my Herman Miller chair and let out a shuddering exhale. The 3-year nightmare was officially, legally over. "How did the Sterlings react?" I asked. "They probably haven't even opened the certified mail yet." Ethan laughed. "They are going to lose their minds. Oh, and next Monday morning, you need to go to the courthouse to formally sign the final decree. Be ready." I hung up and stared out my corner office window. The morning sunlight flooded the room, wrapping me in a warm embrace. This office, this title, this sunlight 3 months ago, I couldn't have even fantasized about this. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Brianna poked her head in. "Harper, Mr. Thorne requested you in his office." Marcus's door was slightly ajar. I knocked and he called out, "Enter." He was reviewing a thick binder. Looking up, he gestured to the chair. Singapore headquarters gave the green light. The board formally approved the APAC expansion budget. He set his Mont Blanc pen down. Have you made a decision? I know your divorce was finalized today. I took a deep breath. Yes. Marcus. I accept the position as head of APAC operations. A rare, genuine smile broke across Marcus's face. A very wise decision. Human Resources will send you the relocation timeline by EOD. The next few days were a blur of transitioning my domestic accounts and preparing for the international move. Jenna, though thrilled for my promotion, was devastated I was leaving for Singapore. You have to FaceTime me every day, she whined in the break room. I'm going to die of boredom without you here. I'm not dying, Jenna, I'm just moving for 6 months. I patted her shoulder. When I get back, drinks are on me. Anywhere you want. Over the weekend, I drove out to the New Jersey condo I used to share with Julian. It was my first time back since the police escort. Armed with the court order, the property manager gave me the new keys. Opening the door, the smell of stale air and bad memories hit me. The condo was mostly empty. Julian had been forced by court order to vacate and take his junk. On the living room wall, our massive wedding canvas still hung. My smile in the photo looked strained, my eyes reflecting a deep, hidden exhaustion. I pulled the canvas off the wall and shoved it into a heavy-duty trash bag. In the master closet, some of my old clothes still hung there, waiting. I traced the fabric of a red cocktail dress I had bought for our anniversary and shoved it into a donation bag. The past was dead, but the clothes were designer someone at Goodwill could use them. The kitchen triggered the most visceral reaction. For 3 years, I had stood at that island, slaving over hot stoves to feed the Sterling clan. The stovetop was coated in grease, and the sink was full of dirty dishes, Julian's parting gift. I strapped on rubber gloves and began a deep clean. With every piece of trash I threw out, a layer of trauma peeled off my soul. When I hauled the last trash bag to the curb, my phone rang. Unknown. Hello? Harper. Margaret's screech nearly blew out my speaker. Are you happy now? You stole my son's house, and now Chloe won't even speak to me. What kind of witchcraft did you use on her? I pulled the phone away from my ear. Mrs. Sterling, a Supreme Court judge, issued that ruling. I merely reclaimed my own property. Bullshit! She shrieked hysterically. My Julian hired an appeals lawyer. We are appealing. You are not keeping that house. Do whatever you want, I said calmly. Filing an appeal is your legal right, but the judge explicitly ruled Julian as the at-fault party for fraud and abuse. The odds of an appellate court overturning it are less than 0. You, Margaret stuttered, hyperventilating. Why did Chloe take your side? Maybe because she's the only one in your family with a shred of basic human decency. I hung up and immediately blocked her new burner number. Monday morning, the steps of the courthouse were far more chaotic than before. Several local news crews and freelance photographers had set up tripods. Someone had clearly leaked the finalization of the high-profile corporate divorce. I pulled my sunglasses down and headed for a side entrance. Ethan was already waiting by the metal detectors. The Sterlings tipped off the tabloids, he whispered as we walked. They're trying to publicly shame you into a settlement reduction. I scoffed. It's their last desperate death rattle. Inside the courtroom, Julian and Margaret were already seated at the defense table. Next to them was a new, older attorney who looked far more expensive than their last guy. Margaret looked like she wanted to murder me with her bare hands, but Julian kept a tight grip on her arm. Judge Vance entered and formally announced the final judgment. As the clerk read the devastating financial penalties Julian owed me, Margaret's face contorted until she finally snapped. "This is a kangaroo court! This is legalized robbery!" she screamed. Julian jumped up too. "Your Honor, my parents paid for the renovations on that condo. Why does she get the equity?" Bang! Judge Vance slammed the gavel. Respondent. Silence. The judgment is final and binding. If you object, file an appeal through the proper channels. We absolutely will be appealing. Julian's new lawyer stated loudly, and we will be introducing newly discovered evidence proving the petitioner committed adultery with her superior at her corporation. Ethan shot to his feet. Your Honor, opposing counsel is grandstanding for the gallery. These are baseless, previously dismissed allegations designed to stall execution of the judgment. Judge Vance nodded sharply. The execution of this judgment is not stayed pending appeal. The funds will be transferred to the petitioner's escrow account within 48 hours. Sign the decree. Leaving the courtroom after signing the papers, we were immediately swarmed by reporters in the hallway. Julian and Margaret purposely shoved their way in front of me to hog the cameras. Margaret suddenly started wailing to the press. Look at this injustice! The house my son bought with his blood, sweat, and tears was stolen by this adulterous woman because she manipulated the judge. Microphones were thrust into my face. Miss Harper, do you have a comment on your mother-in-law's allegations? Are the rumors of an affair with your VP true? I stood there, vibrating with anger. Ethan stepped in front of me, shielding me. Ladies and gentlemen, this case was adjudicated fairly by a Supreme Court judge based on irrefutable evidence of abuse and fraud by the respondent. My client has no further comment. Just then, the crowd parted. Chloe pushed her way through the reporters and stood directly in front of her mother. Mom, stop it. Just stop. Chloe? Margaret's eyes bugged out. Whose side are you on? Ignoring her, Chloe turned to the barrage of cameras. I am Julian Sterling's biological sister. I testified under oath, and I will say it here. My brother and my mother systematically abused my sister-in-law for years. The judge's ruling was completely justified. A shocked murmur rippled through the press pool. Camera shutters fired like machine guns. Julian, his face the color of ash, grabbed Chloe's arm violently. Are you out of your mind? Let's go! Chloe yanked her arm free. I'm not crazy. You and Mom are the sick ones. She looked right into the camera lenses. My brother is medically sterile. But he hid it from Harper, blamed her for their fertility issues, and cheated on her constantly. My mother called her a barren hen every single day. Who could survive a marriage like that? The reporters, smelling a viral exclusive, started shouting questions over each other. Margaret collapsed onto the marble floor, screaming in genuine hysterics. Julian, completely unhinged, raised his fist to strike his sister, but the court bailiffs tackled him to the ground immediately. Taking advantage of the total chaos, Ethan grabbed my hand and pulled me down the side stairwell, rushing us out a side exit. Only when I collapsed into the passenger seat of Ethan's Porsche did I realize my hands were shaking violently. Chloe, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Why did she do that publicly? Guilt? Spite? A final break from a toxic family? Ethan said, accelerating away from the courthouse. Whatever her reason, her timing was impeccable. The tabloids can't spin a smear campaign against you. When the guy's own sister publicly corroborates the abuse. And he was right. That afternoon, the New York tabloids and digital blogs ran highly objective, devastating pieces on the Sterling family fraud. Several articles highlighted the horrific cruelty of faking male fertility to psychologically abuse a wife. Public opinion on Twitter flipped instantly, and the trolls who had attacked me were drowned out by overwhelming support. That night, Ethan took me to an exclusive, dimly lit waterfront steakhouse in Brooklyn to celebrate. To freedom. He raised his glass of Cabernet. I clinked my glass against his. To justice. The soft candlelight illuminated Ethan's sharp jawline. Looking at him, it suddenly hit me that for the past 3 months, he had been a constant, unwavering presence. From that first consultation to the final courtroom victory, he never flinched. So, what's the game plan now? He asked, elegantly slicing his ribeye. The firm is relocating me to Singapore. I'm taking over as the head of APAC operations for 6 months. His knife paused. He looked up, his expression unreadable. When do you leave? Next Monday. I studied his face. Why? Is something wrong? He set his silverware down and looked deeply into my eyes. Harper, over these last 3 months, I wasn't just fighting for you because you were a client. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? He took a slow breath. I mean, I have feelings for you, not out of pity for what you survived, but because I am entirely captivated by your resilience, your brilliance, and your courage. I sat there, utterly stunned. I never imagined Ethan the elite, untouchable Manhattan lawyer. The guy who commanded courtrooms would confess to me like this. I don't know what to say, I stammered, my cheeks flushing. Honestly, I just clawed my way out of a sociopathic marriage. I am nowhere near ready to start anything new. I know. He smiled. A warm, genuine smile. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I just want you to know that when you're in Singapore, I don't want you to think of us solely as attorney and client. After dinner, he suggested we walk along the Brooklyn Heights promenade. The early summer breeze off the East River was gentle, carrying the faint scent of the ocean. We walked side by side. Occasionally, our shoulders brushed, and a subtle electric current shot down my arm. Look, Ethan pointed across the water to the glowing Manhattan skyline. Looks like a brand new start, doesn't it? I followed his gaze. The city lights reflected on the dark water, beautiful and full of infinite possibilities. Yeah, a brand new start, I whispered. He turned to face me. Harper, when you get back from Singapore, would you go on a real date with me? I looked up into his earnest eyes. There was no calculation, no cold manipulation like I had seen in Julian, only warmth, respect, and total sincerity. Maybe it was time to give myself permission to live again. Yes. The word slipped past my lips before I could overthink it. He smiled brightly and gently took my hand. We didn't say anything else. We just stood there in comfortable silence, watching the city glow, as if we were finally bidding farewell to the dark shadows of the past. The next few days passed in a whirlwind. The firm threw a lavish going-away party for me. Even Marcus attended, raising a glass to my upcoming conquest of the Asian markets. My desk was buried in farewell gifts, and Jenna cried like a baby, demanding I post Instagram stories from Marina Bay Sands every single day. On my last day in the corporate apartment, I stood in the center of the living room, looking at the packed suitcases. The title to the New Jersey condo was fully in my name, and I had already signed the listing agreement with a luxury realtor to sell it and liquidate the past entirely. Got everything packed? Ethan asked, leaning against the doorframe. He had taken the afternoon off just to help me carry my luggage to JFK. Yeah. I nodded. The real estate agent is doing the final staging next week. He walked over and pulled me into a soft, grounding embrace. I'm really going to miss you. I rested my cheek against his chest, breathing in the faint scent of his cedarwood cologne. Maybe I'll miss you. Maybe I won't. I teased, feigning indifference. Ouch, he pretended to be wounded. Guess I'll just have to try harder. I laughed and pushed him away gently. Come on, get me to the airport before I miss my flight. During the drive to JFK International Airport, Ethan held my hand across the center console the entire way. The New York landscape sped by the window, like the traumatic past I was finally leaving behind. Upbeat music played on the radio, and the afternoon sun felt impossibly warm. Call me the second you land, he said, looking at me with deep reluctance as we stood by the TSA security checkpoint. I will. I nodded with a wide smile. Mr. Caldwell, since when did you become such a worrier? He suddenly turned serious. Harper, I mean it. I'll be flying out to Singapore to see you frequently over these next 6 months. I stood on my tiptoes and pressed a soft kiss to his cheek. I'll be waiting. After passing through the security scanners, I turned back one last time. Ethan was still standing there. His tall, broad-shouldered silhouette stood out effortlessly in the crowded terminal. He waved at me, a warm, reassuring smile on his lips. At the boarding gate, a long line had already formed. While waiting, I thought back to the woman I was 3 months ago. Humiliated by my mother-in-law, discarded by my husband, financially held hostage. That pathetic, broken woman was gone. The woman standing here now had a thriving career, absolute freedom, and the beautiful possibility of a healthy, loving relationship. My phone vibrated. A final text from Chloe. Have a safe flight. I am so sorry for everything. And thank you. I sent her a smiling emoji and powered my iPhone off. The Boeing 777 would be taking off shortly, and a spectacular new life awaited me on the other side of the world. And this time, I would never let anyone else hold the pen to my destiny. Thank you all for following along. I hope this story sparks a conversation about recognizing your worth and standing up to emotional and financial abuse. If this resonated with you, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Together, let's spread positive energy and protect our inner light. Thank you. M.